Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And I am on with Stan Bialecki from Bialecki Farms, which is a market farm in northeastern Pennsylvania, focusing on year-round production of hydroponic greens, in addition to an assortment of seasonal crops. The farm's growing practices use a combination of old and new technologies, from high-wheel cultivators to high-tech greenhouses. Their produce can be found at area farmers markets, grocery stores, and restaurants. Welcome to the podcast, Stan.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, it's great to chat with you here. I mean, we've talked online for years and gone back and forth. I've always been impressed with just how much of the technical detail of growing that you, have researched, and it's great to, be able to chat in person.
Yeah, it with hydroponic growing, it requires a high level of technical knowledge for the fact that we do not have a lot of help available. You can pay for help, but it's very expensive.
Gotcha.
Like for instance, you can, if you go and buy a brand new greenhouse, you can pay for a year of consulting, but even that may not work for you in your region.
Mm-hmm. Because tell us a little bit about your region. You're in Pennsylvania, which some people would say it's nice and warm, but you're in the mountains, so it's much colder.
Yeah, we like to refer to this corner of Pennsylvania as Alaska.
Okay.
Our growing degree hours is less than 1,600.
Okay.
So that makes it so, like tomatoes, for instance, never would ripen outside.
And so, like, how cold can you get in the wintertime?
Winter, well, now it's not as cold as where you're from up there in New York.
Yep.
But our temperatures our daytime highs are lower.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just because it's so much higher in the mountains, you just have less. Yeah. It just never gets as warm.
Yeah. It just never gets as warm. And in the summer as well, like our high temperatures, it'll be 100, say down in Scranton, but up here, it'll only be 83.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you get a lot of snow too.
Yeah, we get measured in feet.
Yes. Okay. All right. So Stan, tell us a little bit about how you got started, because I know you've kind of bootstrapped this from the ground up.
Yeah, well, what happened is me and my wife were part of that back to the land movement after Y2K.
I was a part of that. My parents were, I guess, as I would rather say.
And we kind of wanted to move out of town and get a piece of property in the mountains. And so we did. What we didn't know was that the property we were purchasing wasn't necessarily perfect for agriculture. It's a stony mountaintop.
Yeah.
So I went to the auction, as an example. I went to one of the mud auctions and I bought a plow.
Yep.
And I hooked it up to my little tractor, and we went 40 feet and I snapped the shank off of the plow.
So that means that you had to do something different.
Yes. Well, we did make a little garden, we added compost, and we at the time we were keeping goats. So we had plenty of compost and plenty of manure, and we worked at that, and we picked the stones out, and, we had a small 30 by 60 foot garden, like house garden. We also raised pigs and chickens and had cattle. But we were really looking for some way that we could make money on the property. And with the livestock, our property is only 13 acres. So it kind of doesn't work, with it being so cold, chickens aren't ideal either.
Absolutely. So then you actually have some outside production, and is that just bringing in a lot of soil, building up with a lot of compost, or how are you making that work?
Yeah, well, we don't have a lot of outside production. Most of our production's inside. Our outside production's probably only maybe 1/8 of an acre.
Okay.
And what we do is we bring in mushroom compost, which is available here in Pennsylvania very cheaply. And we just put 6 inches on top of the ground and plant into it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense right
Yeah.
there. All right. So let's talk tunnel production. So when did you build your first tunnel?
My first tunnel was a small little, it was 12 by 20.
Okay.
And it mimicked after I was reading Elliot Coleman at the time. And he said you could grow things in the winter. And I'm like, well, that's really cool. It'd just be nice to grow things in the summer. So I went ahead and made a little plastic, made it out of PVC, and it worked really well. And that first year that we grew tomatoes, from 8 plants, I got 240 pounds of tomatoes. And I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yes. Yeah.
And so what we did is we just made another greenhouse, another one that was twice as long. And then we did that for a year, and we started a small vegetable stand out in front of the farm, and that did pretty well. We are on what you'd say a quiet road. There's not a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
So our sales were kind of limited to that, but we were very happy. And so what happened after that is we used that money that we made from the vegetable stand to go to a hydroponic seminar run by Crop King.
Yep.
Okay. And that's where it lit my fire to try hydroponic.
Yeah.
So I say, okay, let me find out about the hydroponic. And I talk to them, and I go to FSA to get a loan because they're the only people that are going to give you that much money. And the loan officer for FSA actually talked us out of buying the Crop King system, only because if you looked at the numbers from Crop King, we needed to have 92% sold to break even. We didn't make any money yet.
Yeah.
So she said, if this doesn't work, and it looks very difficult, you're going to lose your farm.
Yeah.
And we did have the credit, we did have the equity that we could have done it.
Yeah.
But she stopped us and she said, you have to figure out a way to do it smaller.
Gotcha. Because how many square feet were they looking with that system?
That was 140 by 40.
Okay. So is that
like
a 2-bay or a single bay?
Yeah, 2-bay.
Yeah.
2-bay by 140, I believe.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then obviously, with those hydroponic systems, though, they kind of I feel like they kind of upcharge some of the stuff. I feel like you could still get into a house that size and set up your own hydro if you know what you're doing for a lot less than what they charge.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would tell anyone that's interested in doing hydroponic production to look into building as much of it you can yourself. The systems are very, very expensive. Now it works very well, but it's very expensive. And it requires you to you're like, I know a lot of the small farms you see, they worry about the cost of land. Well, when you start talking about greenhouse production, the cost of land isn't much at all. The equipment can really get expensive really fast.
Absolutely. Okay, so you built your second greenhouse, and then didn't you do a DIY greenhouse for the hydro?
Completely.
Okay.
So what we did was we ended up getting a loan on our mortgage, and our intent was to just grow lettuce in the ground. Okay, when we got that loan, because the hydroponic was far too expensive, so we'll just do that. And we started that. And we built a greenhouse. We bought 3 kits from Rimmel Nor'easters, and we just started. We built one. The following year, I had discovered on YouTube, what's his name there? MHP Gardner. He's down, and he does. He made a simple Dutch bucket system for hydroponic growing. So I made that, and I put that in the second house. So I started growing the hydroponic tomatoes in there, and that went well. And then that winter, we found the suspended pot method, or what people call the Dr. Cracky method of growing. hydroponics. So we tried it out in February in a little garden window here in the house,
Okay.
and it went well. So we took and made a couple of those tanks and put them in that in the first greenhouse right on the ground. We just made, like, I just took 2x4s, lined it with plastic, put a lid on top of it, and waited to see what would happen. And it worked. And it worked really well. So we were able to then, we started going to markets at this point. We started making a little money. We had a little money coming in.
Yep.
So we were able to invest. And what we did with that third greenhouse is we made that in all hydroponic tables, all Cracky style hydroponic tanks.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about you've got the greenhouses and you're growing hydroponically. And what are your markets for all of this?
We have 2 markets in the summertime. They're all relatively local markets. We do travel about 45 minutes to the farthest one, but we are pretty rural here. So town is 35 minutes away. So it's not that much further. It would be, I mean, it's like the other side of the closest town. And they're just local markets. We are lucky that we're right next to the Catskills, and the Catskills are it's the playground of Manhattanites in the summertime. So we do have a large influx of vacation, if you want to say vacationers, but they do come every week.
Gotcha. So they're shopping with you every single week during the season. Okay. Gotcha. And then during the pandemic, did you continue to do that, or did you do any online sales? I know that I saw some players that you were actually trying to ship, or are you shipping product too?
We were shipping. The problem has been the postal service has just been atrocious.
Okay.
So we haven't, I was shipping boxes. Now it was very local to people within like northeastern Pennsylvania, eastern, western New York, like very local, but shipping boxes 25 minutes away were taking 7 to 10 days.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm paying, and you're paying for the 2-day shipping, which would be okay.
Yeah.
But it just didn't work. So we'll try that again in the future, but right now it's not possible.
Yeah.
Our markets actually, because of that large Manhattan presence or New York City people presence, we're actually busier this year than in the past.
Okay, because people got out of the city and stayed in the Catskills. That absolutely totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not just the Catskills, but also here in northeastern Pennsylvania too. There's been I would say COVID has caused the same exodus of people that 9/11 did. Which is really, it's really interesting.
Yeah. All right, let's dive back into production a little bit. So tomatoes, hydroponically, what kind of yield can you get from, let's say, a plant for like a beefsteak tomato? Do you measure that kind of thing?
Yeah, you can. I would say our system is very primitive. We use I mix the nutrient in the tank. It drains in the tank. It pumps from the tank up, and then it drains back into the tank. And so we have a drain back system on a float. Our system is, we probably do 20 to 25 pounds per plant pretty easily. You can do as much as 40. Yeah. So ours is not like weird, but that house is very primitive. The only thing we have in there that you would say, the only kind of functions we have is we have electric fans and heat. We have heat, but it's not even well heated, really. Yeah. Now, remind me too. I think you're pretty rural, and you don't have a lot of great. You don't have electric on the site, or is it? I didn't. We do. Okay. Well, put electric now. That was a big cost that we did a year and a half ago. Okay. But when we built that greenhouse, we did not have electric, so it is all run. It still is. All the systems run off solar power. Okay. So how big of a solar panel do you need to run that? Well, I have 4 100-watt panels. 400 watts. Okay. 400 watts runs that tunnel. Yep. All right. And so is that automated roll-up sides? No. I had it roll up sides, but the problem is it ended up being a lot of work because you're going down there every morning, every evening, every morning, every evening.
Yeah.
So what we did is I put in some solar powered fans.
Aha. Okay. And
So
because
it don't,
you
yeah,
don't need a ton of ventilation too, because of how cool it stays. Even though, I mean, you
yeah,
obviously want to get rid of humidity, but it's not like it's, again, the Hudson Valley where you have those 100-degree days.
yeah, or like Texas heat. We
Yeah.
don't have anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the crop mix? I know you've mentioned lettuce, and I know you do that pretty much year round.
We do lettuce and greens year round in the hydroponic production. Now, here's an interesting thing: we do kale, and we do kale in the ground.
Okay.
It does so much for us. It's so much more productive to leave those plants mature and then pick every week than to harvest the whole plant.
The turn and burn.
Yeah, and we do really well with that. It's very profitable. We also do inside the high tunnels. We'll do a crop of zucchini early. We do cherry tomatoes. We've done in the past. We've done green beans. Anything that we can get to market that 4 to 6 weeks early, and we can you can say it can charge a little more, but it's not just charging more. You sell everything. And so when you're going into, like here, I can have zucchini in June.
Yeah.
And everybody else is planting their zucchini in June.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that early start at market with more product makes a huge difference in profitability.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this: do you charge a premium price in the in the early season?
Not I use the same price all year. Am I more expensive than some people? Perhaps, but I don't. I think it's fair for like say the zucchini. It'll be a like say 5 to 7 inch zucchini, and it's $1.50.
Okay.
So I mean, is that expensive? Well, maybe, but not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very high quality product without any blemishes, and
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about your positioning in the marketplace. You've gone in, so you're going to bring stuff in earlier. Do you then try to have it as long as possible as well? So go on the back end and have like tomatoes late into October, or do you tend to just switch up?
Yeah, we do somewhat. Now I will say it's much easier to grow early in the season than it is to grow late in the season.
I agree.
Because it's cold, but we have sun.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't have any sun and we have no heat or anything, so it's awful. But like tomatoes, my wife and I had our last tomatoes in just about Christmas time.
Oh wow!
And we sold our last tomatoes. Oh, maybe the 15th of December.
Okay.
But now we did not heat that tunnel at all this fall.
Oh wow! And
so what we did is we just closed it up, and then as the frost kept hitting, we would pick just before that big next cold is going to come. And the tomatoes are a lot more frost hardy than the plants.
Yes.
And so that they can sit there a while, and then we just picked them, put them in our storage building. They were kept at 45, 50 degrees, and they slowly ripened over 6-8 weeks. I mean, you end up throwing more than half of them away.
Exactly. But at that,
but at that point, it doesn't cost you anything.
Exactly. It's free money.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we talked about the kind of production you do, and then like roots, you also do some roots, and that's what you do in the outside 1/8 of an acre.
Yeah. We do root. Well, we also do some inside too. We do carrots we plant in the August for winter harvest. We do beets for winter harvest. We do turnips for winter harvest. It's what I want you to understand is we are a small market farm that we might only have in peak summer 200 customers.
Okay.
But we have 150 customers all year round.
Gotcha. So you're keeping every single week, you're making that money. You don't have to cram it into 6 months during the summer.
Exactly. exactly. It's a big difference. I mean, workload is less, but it never ends.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you're only family run operation. You don't have any employees.
No employee. We have had, which you'll discover as I know the young father that you are.
Yeah.
When you have teenagers, they prefer not to work for their parents.
Yes.
So we actually have a friend of my son come in the summertime to help us. Like he'll clear the beds or pick the cucumbers, carry the big heavy bins. And my son was actually working at another farm that they produce chickens. So he was doing that.
Okay.
So, and he enjoyed that. So it was good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like it's nice that give them an outside work experience. And like I have the local hardware store here. It's passed now through 3 generations. And the parents have always told the next generation, you can't work here for 4 or 5 years after you graduate college. You have to go work someplace else. And then you can come back, because they just believe so important. That's good to have that outside experience.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Let's talk numbers, because you're a real big around numbers, and we've thrown numbers back and forth on a number of different things. Walk me through like where you're thinking, and like how do you go about deciding about a new crop?
Well, what we try to do anytime we add a crop is I do it at the smallest level possible.
Okay.
To where you can actually get a crop. Like for instance, now we're trying a new red mustard.
Okay.
Now that red mustard, the seed is with hydroponic, the seed and the fertilizer and all that, it's not very expensive. So it's easy, even in the middle of winter, to just go ahead and throw something in and see if it works. So we put it in and see if it grows well. If it grows well, then we try to sell it. If we can sell it and there's customer demand, well, then we'll plant more. It's not, one thing to understand though, is I already understand my costs per plant hole in the hydroponic.
Okay. So you break it down by plant hole per week, probably.
Yes. Per week. So what we try to do is have we have 5,000 holes.
Yeah.
We try to harvest them every 5 to 6 weeks. And so it's 1,800 to 1,000 holes a week. And if you take all of your costs for the month, your propane and your lighting and your electric and then your cost of like your fertilizer and your cubes and seeds, and you put that all together and just divide it by that much.
Yeah.
And it's not complicated math that way. Where I think in this, I think in the soil, when you
there's so many more variables.
Yeah, well, there's more variables, and you can always your bed might not be quite 50 feet. It could be 48.
Exactly.
Or 52.
Yeah.
Where mine, I have 5,000. There's no more.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing is, like, you don't have weeding in the hydroponic system, and because it's in a greenhouse, you can really control the rain, so you're not dealing with the loss of, let's say out in the field you get 90% because you lose some of the rain, or a pest eats it, like a woodchuck or something.
I will say we do get pests in the greenhouse. They're different pests.
Yes,
but we do get them in the greenhouse. The big thing that I've found is it doesn't have to be hydroponic. It's just as successful in the ground in a high tunnel, as long as you have screens or something. The quality of the produce is so much superior because there's not no insect pressure, but there's a lot less insect pressure. So you can harvest 95, 97% of your crop in like the kale I was telling you. We get from a 50-foot row, 25 bags a week for 26 weeks a year. And you do the math on that. Well, that's a lot. And, it adds up to a lot of money. It's nearly 550 bags. Yes.
And that's like, what's say $3 to $4 a bag?
Yeah, $4 a bag. That's
okay. So you're looking at what, $2,200. And how big a bed was that?
And that was a 50-foot bed. It's not even 50 feet really, because it's a 48-foot tunnel. So it's probably 44 feet.
Yeah.
And that's the difference is is like everybody wants to look at the cost of the tunnel, and yeah, it's expensive, but if you can sell the crop that you produce, you'll make back your money in 1 year.
Yes, exactly. Well, yes. So that is $50 per bed foot in
Yeah.
that. And then probably per square foot, is it a 4 foot wide bed probably?
Yeah, I have, they're 42 inches.
Yeah. So then we're looking at $12.50 per square foot. And then you break that down over 26 weeks. And that comes out to be 48 cents per square foot per week in that house.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And you only plant it once. So your labor is incredibly low. It's basically for the 25 weeks, it's just about harvesting.
Yeah. And you check on the crop and you know, but yeah, mostly it's just harvest. And even that, it early on, it's difficult, but as they get taller, you don't even have to bend over anymore.
Yes. Yeah. And I've seen those palm trees.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, pests then. How do you manage those in the greenhouse?
Well, because we're hydroponic, you'll find this funny. We're hydroponic, so there are literally zero conventional sprays or pesticides, like pesticides available for hydroponic production. There's almost none. So we are relegated to the what you'd say like RMI, where there's no label restrictions.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you ever bring in any beneficials?
We have used beneficials in the past. They haven't worked well for us, I think, because our houses aren't very well screened. So I think they end up going outside.
Yeah. Gotcha. Hey, thriving farmers, have you checked us out on YouTube lately? We have a bunch of new content there, including a few rants by me. I want to tell you, you don't want to miss them. I actually go rant about, some of the problems I see in our space and some of the challenges I see farmers facing. So go check that out. We've got instructional videos over there as well. Talk about setting up our new farm here in Ohio and all the steps we're going to do that, as well as just tutorials and tips on best practices for all sorts of things on the farm. So go ahead, check over at Growing Farmers on YouTube and see the new content we put together for you. Okay, so they pop in, they look around, they maybe eat something, but then they head outside because it looks more like wild and free out there.
And so they get like blown out by the fan. So it's not ideal. In the wintertime, we've tried a lot. Like last year I must have bought probably 8,000 ladybugs over the course of a month, and I didn't see any ladybugs in there after a couple of weeks. So I don't know where they went, but they went away. They found a better place. We do use like integrated pest management, where I will never spray the same spray twice in a row, like the same active ingredient.
Okay.
And I try to break that up by like every third or fourth time.
Okay, so let's say you're spraying Pyganic, then you move to like spinosad, and then you go to maybe one of the other ones, and then go back.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't use the spinosad. Most of unless you buy the very expensive one, it's not labeled for inside a greenhouse.
Yeah,
and there's only so much cost. The high quality chemicals get very, very expensive. So what I try to do is I'll use a Pyganic, then I'll use a soap with Azagard.
Yep.
Then I'll use like a bio treatment, like from Marone.
Yep.
And then maybe I'll go back and then maybe I'll just do a soap again.
Yeah.
And then maybe I'll go back to say Pyganic again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing too with that is with rotating, it's really great because you're just making sure they don't build up resistance, because unfortunately, even in organic, some of these cool chemicals that came out, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. We've got this organic, like spinosad. It was amazing. But then within a matter of years, because it was overused by some of these massive farms, the resistance built up incredibly fast. And so
and you'll find, it happened, like one of them are like spider mites.
Yeah.
Now, spider mites, they breed so quickly that it's almost better to take the plants out and throw them away, because you're not taking, all you're doing is suppression. And the problem that I have in the hydroponic is suppression doesn't really work because I'm never not planting.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not, yeah. So then spider mites are mainly on cucumbers for you?
Well, they'll start. Well, last spring we put in a crop of cucumbers because it's nice to have cucumbers at market, and we had them in April. But then come June, they get the spider mites because they always get spider mites late in the season, and so then they transferred to everything else. So I had spider mites on my bok choy. I had spider mites on my Swiss chard, lettuces.
Man, that's crazy getting after so much.
It like made it so bad that I'm never doing that again in the greenhouse.
Yeah. Now, did it go from greenhouse to greenhouse too, or did it just stay in the one greenhouse?
Not thankfully, no.
Yeah.
The only other spot we get that we have the spider mites is eggplant, and eggplants call them from 100 miles away.
Yeah. I'm not. We never found a huge demand for eggplant, but it's one of those things. You always get those few people that really, really want it. So we'd end up growing it. All right, let's talk.
There's a lot of Italians.
Yes, I can imagine. Yes, where you guys are. Absolutely. All right. So then how do you and your wife divide roles on the farm? Do you guys have very specific parts that you guys focus on?
I think somewhat like I do more of the like periodic work where I do more of the check on things in the morning and in the nighttime, or I also build everything, where she more like does the primary sales at market. Now I'm at the market with her, but I'm more the stock boy. She's doing the sales.
Yeah.
And then she also does all the seeding.
Gotcha. Yeah. So she's more of the inside the business, and you're more of the, like the innovation and new build outs.
Yeah. But when we harvest together. And when we're planting together.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, starting into this, you seem to have started like very methodically as you started building greenhouse after greenhouse after greenhouse. When did it go from homestead to, oh my gosh, this is the business and we'll be full-time at this one day?
That was when we decided that, well, honestly, when we bought the 3 big greenhouses, that was the big switch that I finally figured out a way that I thought it could be possible. And I was willing to invest that money, whether it worked out or not.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then we went full. I had an off-farm job. My wife never did. She was the homestead wife, raised our children. And that was 1.5 years ago that I left my job.
Gotcha. So now you're full-time on the farm. Well, that's awesome. Yes. There's not that many farmers that can say that their full livelihood comes from the farm. So what would you say the hardest part of being a farmer is for you?
For us, Michael, I really enjoy it. I looked forward to this dream of being able to live on my homestead for 15 years. Well, I guess 13 and a half years, because it happened 1.5 years ago.
Gotcha.
So I think it's great. It's fantastic.
Gotcha.
I feel so completely blessed that we get to do this.
Now, if you could go back to like when you started, would you do anything significantly different?
I think the big thing we would have done differently is I would have pushed myself to get out there more and get into the bigger, better markets earlier. Because when we first started, we were almost timid to get into those bigger markets. And until you get into the bigger markets, it's very difficult to make enough money.
Yeah, because you're just not making enough sales per hour of selling to actually be profitable.
Yeah, and going to what were not good markets. Like one of the markets we started out it's a flea market.
Yep.
And we would sit there for 7 hours and make $100.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I remember those days.
And so I said, we can't do this anymore. So then we found and we worked and we got it. And now we're in probably comparatively, they're the biggest markets in the region.
Yeah. Yep. Now, and how did you get into those bigger markets? Was it just applying again and again, or was it showing that you had something different and could do it at a different season than somebody else, or?
A little, all of that, all of that.
Okay.
Some of the markets now, our winter market, our big winter market now, that market's exceedingly difficult to get into. And we only got into it because we can grow lettuce in the middle of winter. And even that, it took us going to other markets in the local area and getting known by the vendors
Yep.
there.
Yeah.
And then they're okay. Yeah, well, you can come in then.
Yeah. It's you have to earn your place almost. Yeah.
Yes.
Which can be really, really tough. Yeah. I remember that was for us in our markets. We started the exact same thing, you know, a local gas station parking lot where, you know, some weeks we lost money. We made $5 and the stall fee was $7.50. So, but it took us a year or two to get into the Glens Falls market. That was the first market. We broke $1,000 in that first summer. And then the Saratoga market was the year after that. And we were really lucky to get in. And I always say we were lucky to get in because we looked at what was being offered at the market and found 3 crops that they didn't offer, and then said we would grow those 3 crops.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then 2 years later, we dropped those crops, some of those crops, because they were no longer profitable, but we had gotten our foot in the door, and it was, yeah, I mean, it was an incredibly large part of our business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes going to market a joy when and now that we're established, it's much simpler. Like when you were talking about the new crop, if I bring a new crop and you suggest to your customers, hey, you should try this, and they just do.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I don't have 400. I have maybe 25 to sell.
Exactly. And like that's, you know, something too, like right now we're doing right now, the only crop we're really producing is mushrooms because that's an indoor crop for us. And because we're not at a retail store or not at a farmer's market, we are always having variable production. It makes it very hard to sell out 100% all the time. So that's the beauty of that farmer's market is you can only, as you said, only bring 25 and probably move them all because you have a much larger sales volume you're moving through there.
Exactly.
Yep.
That is the one nice thing about the farmers market. Now, some people I think it's just like, I know there's a big move away from the farmers markets for a lot of the new farmers because you have to go to the market. It takes a lot of time. And when you're starting out, it is much more like those bad markets than the good market.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? But if we stuck it out, and now it's incredible. We almost can't bring enough stuff to the markets.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I know that, yeah, you're right. The aspect of having to go every single week. And I know because too, some people move completely to like home delivery. Some of the farms actually don't want to go back because they're just doing so well with home delivery. So I'll be very interested to see if that lasts, you know, after the pandemic's over, which looks like it's gonna disappear this summer. Then, you know, I wonder what will happen after that and this for these farmers.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see because it's a although if you can sell it that way, that's fantastic. It's not unlike the CSA model, which is good. Good if you have the sales and you have the ability. You have to grow it if you're doing the CSA.
Yes, it's all about if it's right for your farm too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Let's talk about new farmers because you've now been for a number of years, you know, working this farm. What would you say the biggest mistake that you see beginning farmers making is?
I think they try to do too much too soon.
Mm.
It's not like any business. It's very rare that you're going to be the instant success and very profitable right away.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time to learn the skills you need to learn how to grow everything successfully and then how to market it successfully. And I believe for most, they should keep that second job or they should keep a job until they get established.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know a lot of people don't like that, and I wouldn't have liked it either. But as a middle-aged man starting a new business, I had 3 kids, 2 in high school. I couldn't just leave work. We had to get to where we made enough money.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got to get the cash flow coming in. And so in that first year, how many, like, do you recommend a number of crops or just, you know, a certain size of the farm?
I think size more so than the grow what you want to grow, and if it grows well, grow more. You know,
Hmm.
you don't know what's going to do good for you. Some things do good for in some areas and not others, and grow what's profitable is what's easy to grow, and it does well for you, and that's
Hmm.
what's going to be profitable. And then learn how to sell it.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about your lights, because you guys do LED lights, correct?
Yes, yes, we have. I basically designed the light and from imported Chinese parts. They
Okay.
are um, they're not terribly reliable because the parts that you can get are not terribly reliable as far as the LED chips themselves. Um, but to this, they're very inexpensive to build, and for me, they cost less than $100 to build a light that if you were to purchase would be somewhere around $900.
Gotcha. Okay. So you've
So
just done, yeah. Now that makes total sense.
yeah,
And,
and I don't really share the design online, and a lot of people I get questions about it all the time, but they're not really designed to be used in anything but a commercial setting, properly hung where you can't touch it. If
yes,
you
yes.
like, it's not like it should be properly grounded, and they're but they work, and
Yeah.
we can get growth all year round.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. And with that, are you just sourcing like the parts off Alibaba,
Yeah, actually, just
eBay?
eBay,
Okay.
AliExpress,
Yep.
most of the, well, like I said, it's really the only part that's sketchy are the LED chips.
Yeah.
Like I use an American made fan, or at least American sourced. I don't know. It's an American company,
Yeah.
and I use the heat sinks I use are just big aluminum blocks, so that there's nothing special about that. And but the chips themselves, they can, like this year, the first set I made for the other greenhouse, I had no errors. One chip went bad. This
Mhm.
year, I've replaced out of 180, I've replaced 70 chips.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
but that's somebody makes a really good chip in China, then somebody knocks it off, and then somebody knocks it off, and now I'm getting the fourth one. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
now I have to go and source in better quality of
Yeah.
this. You know, that's
Exactly.
just kind of how it is.
Now, how important do you think that light is for your production?
I would not have any production. Well, what it would be too expensive to heat
Gotcha.
here without the
Yeah.
light. Like it's basically my crop turn is averages 6 weeks. If I was to not have lights in December, it would be 10 to 12 weeks.
And yeah, you'd have to have twice as many greenhouses.
Yeah, it just doesn't.
Yeah.
And then you're heating, and the math doesn't work anymore. That's why a
Exactly.
lot of
Yeah.
the hydroponic, even locally here, they almost don't grow in the winter. Or what they'll do is you turn the heat down real low, so you're not using a lot of heat,
Yeah.
and kind of muddle through.
Yeah. It's kind of like what we did. It's more like a stockpile system.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I will say this: the first year that we had the the hydroponic tables, we did not heat at all.
Okay.
Okay. Not We didn't even have a heater in there. And we harvested until about January. And then I planted again in April. And in April here, we still have snow.
Yeah.
And like the lows were in the teens, that kind of thing. And I got a crop for May 15th.
Wow.
So yeah. And so the I don't know of anybody that has grown at scale sub freezing hydroponically.
Yeah. That's very unusual. Yeah.
It's because most everybody uses pumps and everything, but ours doesn't have any pumps, so it doesn't matter if it freezes.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Now, you guys also do some microgreens. Are those grown hydroponically or in soil on trays
Um,
or?
she uses now that's the wife's
Yep.
business there. She uses Pro Mix
Okay.
and basically just a hydroponic nutrient, but weakened. It's 50%.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about your favorite farming tool.
My favorite, you're gonna laugh at this, but honestly, it's probably the computer.
Mm.
because we get so much information from your Facebook groups, for instance, from YouTube, from university studies, that because there's not a lot of information for small scale hydroponic production available. Like you literally have to, like, if you can read Dutch, you can get some, but all that's much bigger scale. It's not at our scale. So some of it applies, some of it doesn't apply. And so it's very difficult. Like I'm reading studies from the 1960s.
Oh, wow.
And because that's all that's available there. And like, I know in the organic space, they complain that there's not a lot of help for the organic growers. Well, it's not available for us.
Yeah. And there's a lot, I feel, for the organic. Yeah. I would love to see more research dollars go into it, but I'm still blown away by how much we do get. Yeah. Well, it sounds like, there is that information out there, but it's all being tied up by these massive companies like Crop King, which are really putting a stranglehold on getting that information out. Well,
yes, there's that. And also the other big, because we in the hydroponic space have farms that are just as big as Dole. You don't realize it, but they are. Their products are all over the grocery stores. You just don't know it's grown hydroponically because they don't tell you. But they see it as intellectual property, so they don't want to share. And so it's very difficult to get any kind of information. We almost hired someone that was working at the Cook's Garden up outside of Cleveland. And just talking to him, and he was really helpful, but he was always have to think about like, one of the things we talked about was like, okay, I know you came from a place where the R&D is serious. What can you and can't you share? So we obviously had to have that conversation. But the amount of research he was doing for that company just blew my mind. I mean, they were shaping plants by using nutrients and different intensities of the lights and how they place them. Absolutely. They literally can make the plants taste different by the different frequencies of LED light. So they make it sweeter or more bitter or more, it'll have more cannabinoids in it. So their marijuana is stronger because it's insane. How technical you can get. And I think to the same token, a lot of the information is super technical.
Exactly. And for most farmers, you don't need to get there, especially because people aren't going to appreciate that difference. I mean, obviously they're selling to chefs, and chefs do appreciate that, that very, very minute differences, but the most consumers aren't going to really be able to see that.
Exactly.
Well, Stan, what else would you like to share? Anything else before we head out?
No, I don't think so. I just wanted to say that I appreciate all the work you do for the small farms, Michael.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a passion of mine. So I enjoy looking at your guys' pictures and seeing how you guys are doing things every single, all over the internet, and appreciate you sharing. You definitely make me step up my game. So anyone that challenges me is good. So I appreciate that.
Well,
all right.
Good to talk to you, Michael.
All right. Again, Stan, thanks so much for coming on.
Bye.
Hey, Thriving Farmers. Next week on the podcast, I am going to be interviewing Alyssa and Chase, who are from Woodland Valley Farms. It is an amazing interview. We dive into all the different enterprises. They are a very mixed farm doing a high dollar a week CSA and providing like a full diet CSA. So join us as we chat all about farming. We get real, we get raw about how they started their farm, the struggles they had along the way, and what it takes to build a profitable business. So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.